East is east and west is west and never the twain shall meet. Those were the days of Rudyard Kipling. Times have changed. Today Indians savor the taste of pasta. The English fall for curry. Hello and welcome to another lesson in excellence. Today we visit the global village and explore how globalization has changed the very paradigms of business. And strangely, it's the smaller companies that are best leveraging the opportunities.
It was by going global that Acer, a tiny startup company, became the second largest maker of personal computers in the world. So did WEG, a Brazilian giant, emerge as the fifth largest producer of electric motors in the world, spreading its operations across 55 major countries. Eastwards, Jollibee Corporation of the Philippines gave McDonald's a run for its money. And small companies made it big by straddling the globe.
Why should companies globalize? Is it only about expanding markets?
Let's step back from it. I think the most important issue we'll talk about is expanding markets. However, the real issue is building global competitiveness, to be competitive on a global basis rather than local basis. Much of Reliance's operations are in India, but the units are globally competitive. So there is an issue of markets. You go global. There's an issue of resourcing. Do you source from the best places in the world at the lowest cost? Do you get talent? Do you get capital? So the focus is on international expansion, but at its heart is the challenge of building global capabilities, global competencies. Now then you come to the next step. I mean, all said and done, when I used to teach international management course, I used to start the course putting up a map of the world as people see it. And then you put up a map of the world where all the geographies are reproportioned to their GDP, or even worse, GDP per capita. And India becomes small like this, and Belgium becomes big like this, and all the Indian students in class used to get very upset by that map. If you see the map, viscerally you feel upset, at least I do as an Indian. And I think that's an issue. India actually, for many products, is a very small market. There are a number of companies in India which actually are quite strong, even though they do not recognize it. There is a huge opportunity on a global basis.
So a couple of issues there. Opportunity, yes, but your entry point is often at the very, very base level of the value chain, number one. Number two, the cost that you incur, the upfront cost that you incur in trying to capture those markets may be so huge that your ability to apply all those financial yardsticks of return on capital, etc., may really come after a very, very long period of time. So it sort of militates against the expansion argument.
Let's take a concrete example. I think one sector in India that has done really well in terms of going global is the pharmaceutical sector. Whether it's Ranbaxy, whether it's Dr. Reddy's lab.
Ranbaxy, a company that made it big by going global. Despite a difficult and loss-ridden beginning, Ranbaxy stuck the course and changed its strategy. It built new customer relationships internationally, identified global distribution networks, and built a strong brand image. With a turnover of $600 million in 2001, it has made huge investments globally, like a $10 million venture in Vietnam. But its critical path was to build world-class research capabilities.
Now, if you look at Ranbaxy, the issue was not really money, or Dr. Parvinder Singh didn't start with a huge amount of capital. I'll spend $500 million to go international. What he did have was a clear ambition. We will build a research-based international pharmaceutical company at a time when the company was a small, little, intermediate drugs producer. From that time, he had the vision. From the beginning, it's been a marathon. It's not something you do in a quarter or a year, but steadily kept on building the markets. Today, yes, Ranbaxy has a significant operation abroad. Its sales internationally exceeds its revenue in India.
Is that then the mantra, go small, get into the market, establish some beachheads, establish some successes, and then talk about expanding? There's no big bang entry into any of those markets?
I mean, again, if you are starting with the US market, the size of the US market is such that even a small presence there may need certain investments. On the other hand, if you're starting in Thailand or in Dubai, your initial investment may be much smaller. But absolutely, go sequentially in terms of spreading your geographic scope. If you try to enter 20 markets in the same year, you'll make a hatch of all of them. Going global is a marathon.
Gita, the whole experience of the IT companies, the information technology companies, Sumantra has spoken about the pharmaceutical companies. Now even the Indian IT companies are supposedly working on a global scale, but they're also at the extremely low end of the value chain, and very few of them, in fact perhaps none of them, have given evidence of being able to climb that up.
That's true, but at the same time the ambition is there. I think all of them do want to move up the value curve.
At what point do you think companies like the IT companies, even pharmaceutical companies, at what point do they reach that momentum in the marathon that they can now take a leap forward?
Indian IT companies, TCS, Infosys, Wipro, MBT, Satyam, they provide largely service. Now service has its own value curve, but the service value curve, first step was, I give you cheap labor. It costs you, $80 an hour in California. I will hire Indian labor at $5 an hour, give it to you for $20 an hour. At your site, they work, export of cheap labor. From there, the next step of the value curve was when Infosys created offshore development centers. There is a front part, I understand the work, I develop the work back here. It was a significantly hard step in the value curve. You needed to have significantly superior capabilities to be able to manage those interfaces. But through that now, you could start building service process capabilities in these offshore development centers. Then comes the third phase, when it says in the front end, it is not just salespeople going down from India and saying, give me an order because I'm a lower cost. I will create customer-facing units. You will meet an American manager coming to you as Infosys. I've often heard people asking Mr. Narayan Murthy, oh, you don't do R&D. His business is a different one. It has different capability requirements, very stringent, extremely difficult, but you have to understand his business from that business model of software services and not confusing with a Microsoft or an Oracle, far less, a Sun or an IBM.
In terms of top management commitment to this process of globalization or to this process of trying to overcome the liability of Indianness, do remember that some of these companies, the overseas operations begin as a very small part of their entire portfolio of business. It may therefore not get the kind of top management push.
See, it's very easy to say overcoming Indianness when you're talking of the external business. Let's talk about overcoming Indianness within India, because as Mantra mentioned earlier, we're really talking about going global doesn't mean just outside India, but are you world class within India? Now, if you take, say, what Rahul Bajaj was saying in the 70s and 80s for Bajaj Auto, that Bajaj Auto has to be global. You've got a 10-year waiting list. There's no possibility of exporting or doing anything international. Why is he asking all his company employees to be thinking about going global? But then you're setting a threshold, you're setting a benchmark. That's what you want to be. That's where you want to be.
Let's face it, Indian companies have three major problems. One problem is, one day will come when made in India will mean the Rolls Royces, best quality. Today is not that day.
It doesn't.
Second liability is the largeness of our own market. India is a very large market. It offers huge opportunities. Third is Indian standards. For many products, both formal standards in India and more so, customer expectations in India are way below global levels. I think those are the three major liabilities: the brand made in India, the largeness of the Indian market and the opportunities in the market, and the weak standards.
And you overcome these by top management?
This is where the real challenge lies, to be able to say, I will develop the product, even though a large part of it will be sold in India, but I will develop the product to global standard, not Indian standard.
Bajaj Auto dreamt of going global in the early 90s, but reality stared it in the face. In 1990, exports accounted for 1% of its sales. But Bajaj felt it was well on course. With a share of 30% of Uruguay's motorcycle market, 65% of Colombia's scooter market and 95% of Bangladesh's three-wheeler market. However, the reality remained. It exported only 40,000 vehicles in 55 countries. Not driving its global agenda hard enough, Bajaj's dreams remained just that, simply because its business plan failed to sense the pulse of the international market.
Sumatra, when companies go global, how much of the local management talent, the local reality, do they need to factor into their business plans? Because the business plans, the original business plans, are written up in their boardrooms in India.
Early 80s, there was this euphoria. It came primarily from the United States. Ted Levitt wrote a very influential article earlier called The Globalization of Markets, which basically said, look, the world has become a single global village. The Americans are just like the Brits, and the whole challenge of globalization is to make and sell the same thing the same way everywhere. What we have learned over the last 2 decades is that simply ain't true. Yes, you need all the benefits of standardization. You need all the economies of scale that you can capture, but the world is not one place. Different markets are different. There are different market infrastructures. There are differences in customer taste preferences. There are differences in regulations. Take the Ranbaxy story. Okay? In some markets around the world, you can sell branded generics. In some markets, you can't sell branded generics.
You can't sell because of the regulatory
Because of the regulatory environment, because of the nature of the market structures. In the US, the way you will build up your business from bulk intermediates to generics, and it's a huge opportunity, is completely different from China. So Ranbaxy's operation in China, Ranbaxy's operations in South Africa, Ranbaxy's operations, home labs in the United States, they have to be fundamentally different, even though the basic chemical and the container may be the same. The brand building process in China, the distribution infrastructure for pharmaceuticals in the US versus China are totally different.
So what is the critical role of local management? These companies which send perhaps their CEOs from India, but in terms of the ability to build local management in China, in South Africa, in the US.
Here, there is a theory which I would love to believe, and a reality that I see. The theory I'd love to believe is says, look, Indian companies, you go to America, you hire American managers, they understand their counterparts in the client companies, and it's so much easier. That's to become truly global. We must have American managers, British managers, Chinese managers. As a theory, that's the right theory. I wish I could believe that. Reality, I find, at least in the initial phases, because you need the link back with India, that's where your competencies are. And because all said and done, about the one thing where we genuinely have a competitive advantage is low-cost good management. I would say for Indian companies, this may not be true for Nigerian companies, I don't think it's true for Brazilian companies. For Indian companies, I say, in the first phase, send your very best managers from India abroad, ensure that you start hiring local people, perhaps at a lower level, so that over time they understand the company culture, and come up and take those jobs. The Japanese did this. And I think, given the Indian situation, I think that's what they have to do. But invest there. Don't send the person that domestic operation doesn't like. He failed in Pune, let's send him to Cleveland. Don't do that. Send the very best, most ambitious, most committed managers, send them abroad, they become the beachheads.
Let me give you just another small example on this. Let's take Hero Honda. And if you go to Hero Honda and just ask for an organization chart, pops one, you ask for another one, and then you've got the Japanese and the local Indians on that chart.
This is for Hero Honda, the Indian operation.
This is Hero Honda.
The joint venture in India.
That's right. So you've got the Japanese there, you've got the Indians there, and there is a fair amount of, the Japanese there are totally involved. They look at the reports. Wherever there is a really good Indian report, a really good way of designing a report, a good way, a good process, and they will carry it back to Honda.
So that's the amount of integration that the Japanese
That's
parent in Japan.
So they're learning from Hero and,
And taking
sending
it back.
back to Honda.
A local flavor in its international business. That is Infosys's guiding mantra in going global, and it ensures local participation through its proximity development centers in its overseas business locations, which are staffed by nationals of that country. With more than 20% of its business requiring constant communication with its clients, Infosys ensures that customer solutions are only a call away. But the key to its success is understanding the global market needs, and when required, it joins hands with local companies.
This whole business of Indian companies when they try and enter global markets, would it not be better to enter into joint ventures, alliances, strategic partnerships, or is it better to ride in on your own and open up those markets yourself?
Look, first thing is there are some markets, and as it happens, a lot of markets where you have no option. You have to have a local partner. All over the Middle East, for example,
Right.
you have to have a local partner. Let's keep those aside.
That's
Because
a
you have no
regulatory
option.
issue.
That's a local regulation issue. Historically, we had a cycle of internationalization. We said, look, first you appoint a local distributor, he sells your products. Then you create your sales subsidiary, and so on. That's the way you went. Now, alliances provides an opportunity. However, if you take downstream investments, and this I say not just Indian, I look at the experience of South African companies, I look at the experience of Brazilian companies like WEG and others, which have become international. I think their experience is in the downstream, you are better off making your own investment, small as it will be, or you may have a distributor or an alliance initially, but with a strategy that ultimately you'll acquire it because you want 100% control over those customer-facing units.
Okay, downstream, I was just trying to get it for our audience, are really the retail outlets, the marketing, where you
customer relationship units. Technology, on the other hand, I think provides enormous opportunities for alliances. So do choose manufacturing if you want to go on overseas manufacturing. I think alliances can very well work there. Technology is best to go for alliances rather than doing your own investment simply in terms of strategic advantage. But customer-facing units, I will say, as far as possible, those keep for yourselves.
Conventional wisdom would have you believe that, my God, I'm entering the US or I'm entering the UK, big markets, markets in which I am not known, I'm not a kingmaker. Conventional wisdom would be, why don't I ride piggyback with somebody? But you're saying, don't go with that.
Because if I take WEG's experience in small motors, I take Ranbaxy's experiences, I take Usha Martin's experiences in wire ropes, I'm not sure alliances or just mass distributors really work. You can have an opportunistic deal. You get one order.
Right.
But to build sustainable presence, those I believe you need to own.
Have to do it yourself. Geeta, the final issue in this whole overseas drive, you know, you could run the danger, couldn't you, of getting seduced by the global dream and try and or end up ignoring your home base. Is that a danger, a real danger?
Yeah, you have to protect your home base because that's where the resources are coming from. That's where your money's coming from, your people are coming from. If you weaken over there, you're thin everywhere.
Have you seen that as a danger in your actual experiences and interfaces with companies that have aggressively gone global? Perhaps, say, the initial phases, top management got so taken up with overseas operations that they tended to. Is that a danger which is more imagined than real?
You know, the danger is not just top management focuses everything abroad. In fact, I would say top management needs to disproportionately focus abroad, simply like it's a small child. That small child requires more attention of top management. The danger is you will also, no matter what you do, have to put disproportionate amount of resources there. Money, people, talent, where will they come from? They will essentially come from where you're strong, your home market.
Right.
That is where the danger comes about, which is, are you paying sufficient attention to your home market? If you take, just, it's an interesting case, take Ranbaxy today. Which is the market where Ranbaxy needs to really focus attention now? Actually, it's the Indian market. But the way Ranbaxy has gone, it now says, India is not a market. There are 4 zones. The world is 4 zones. India happens to be one of the zones. And it is that zone where the opportunities are there, where they need to push back because competition is stiffening, because there's a consolidation going on. But don't forget, India is not a small economy. If you are internationalizing out of Belgium, or out of Uganda, or out of Dubai, your local base does not provide your key resources. You get it in California or Silicon Valley or in Germany. India is a big economy. Indian companies need to think and understand that they are like Japan, like the United States, not like Holland. Therefore, your people, your technology, your new skills will come here. When we look at people and say, oh, look, you don't have energy, you are lethargic, the problem is not that person. I have all the energy, he or she has all the energy, all the creativity. The problem is the management that ends up creating this downtown Calcutta in summer context inside that saps away all that energy, that saps away the creativity.